Good morning. Jennifer Branch and I represent the Plush family. Today we filed suit in order to pursue their continued search for truth. We're litigating on their behalf to find the answers to all the problems that led to the death of their son on April 10th, 2018. He was in a van in a Seven Hills school parking lot. He was trapped in the back. He could not reach his phone, it was in his pocket, but he managed to make 2 calls to 911 from his cell phone. And those calls were actually received by 911 operators. And even though those operators had plenty of information, had lots of location data, had everything they needed to know in order to save Kyle's life, the police never found him. He was found that night dead in that van by his own father. So we were contacted in January of 2019 to pick up from where the city left off. The family had gone to the city, tried to get direct answers, went to many meetings, and got no clear information about what led to their son's death. And as you can see from the collection of statements by city council members at the last meeting of council, there was an agreement that they didn't have what they needed in order to really understand Kyle's death. But the city wasn't going to do anything further. So we were contacted in 2019 by the family. We hired 2 experts, a 911 expert, John Melcher, who is the former CEO of the Harris County 911 Emergency Center. That's the 2nd largest in the nation. And we also hired Michael Lyman, a police practices expert. And we gave them, first we tried to let Mr. Melcher come to Cincinnati and have access to 911 workers and the emergency call center, and the city refused to give him access. So we have been steadily trying to seek public records. We've been feeding those to Mr. Melcher. I have gone to Houston. I've gone to the Harris County 911 Center. I stood in the middle of a place that was operating correctly, and I said, what should have happened? And he walked me through it, and I saw how this should have led to a proper response to Kyle. And he has prepared a preliminary expert report based on the public records that we have secured, and we have filed that report along with the lawsuit today. So if you look here, you'll see what the city found with respect to their investigation of Kyle's calls, and then what our preliminary investigation shows. First, with respect to the first 2 calls, the city found, and this is the same for both, that the operator followed standard policies and operating procedures, that the operator's actions were consistent with training, and they closed the investigation. And as you can see over here, both of these call takers were exonerated. That was the message to these parents about the death of their son. So what have we found? Well, here's what Mr. Melcher found. First of all, on the first call, he said that the operator failed to clearly share the geolocation of Kyle with the responders. Why does this matter? This is what he was able to reconstruct from the electronic data record of the first call. There are multiple what are called rebids. These are times when the call taker presses a button, or the last 6 times are, manually presses a button to generate a location from an ALI, which is an automatic location index. And what they found here, what Mr. Melcher found here, was that there are so many overlaps that you can't even see the separate dots. This turned out to be extremely accurate for the first call taker. There's only 2 that are slightly off from where Kyle was actually parked. So this technology worked beautifully. She had exactly what she needed to direct the rescue effort. But first, she didn't classify the call correctly. She called it something called, which is a grab bag, unknown trouble. And what she should have done is classified it as a rescue, as a call for rescue. What difference would that have made? If she had classified it as a call for rescue, that would have sent fire and EMTs, because they have the extraction equipment, they have the emergency medical staff that are needed for this type of rescue. But she didn't do that. So 2 police officers are responding, and she never really, and the other thing that's important here is that if the fire and rescue people had gone, they had the same technology in their vehicles that the call taker and the dispatcher had on their workstation. So they'd have been communicating in real time. In fact, the fire and rescue people even have a locator on their vehicles so that the call taker and the dispatch can tell where those vehicles are. Police don't have any of that. So this amazingly accurate work was not being utilized in the way this was dispatched. The other thing that the first call taker did was she delayed all CAD entries, any sort of beginning to respond to this for 7 minutes, which is an incredibly long time in this world of emergency response. And finally, while she had a great deal of information about what Kyle said, she didn't share it all. And what she did share didn't underscore the emergency that was really happening. She didn't say that he was pounding, that he was screaming. She didn't say that he said he thought he was going to die. So there was no urgency to this call. What Mr. Melcher says is that this call taker abandoned her duty to Kyle rather than followed all of her duties. And then as far as the second caller goes, what we find is that, and we will play the call for you shortly, you will hear Kyle talking. Why is that important? Well, the second call taker dealt with the call as if it was from a deaf person, as if it was a silent call. So even though Kyle's talking, she turns on the type of equipment, TTY equipment, that you use to communicate with deaf people. Those are tones. And then you're looking for the electronic handshake that responds to those tones. When that is engaged, what happens, when that's activated, what happens is that the caller's voice is reduced by 75% and the call taker's microphone is muted. So there's very low possibility of communication. During that time, as you will hear, Kyle's saying a lot of really important things, like I'm in a gold Honda Odyssey, I'm in the sophomore parking lot, I'm going to die, tell my mother I love her. And those are all missed in real time by the second call taker. And what should she have done? She should have at least played back the call. And as Mr. Melcher says, she failed to do that. So it's standard when you're not listening to a call in real time that you play it back if you think you may have missed something. She doesn't play it back. And then the most amazing thing is that she didn't even make a record of the call. And the officers were still at that parking lot within feet of the vehicle at the time. And she made no record of the call. There was no reaching out to those officers. There was a dramatic missed opportunity. So she also completely failed in her duties to Kyle, and they never were directed to find him. Should we play the call?
Yes, if those of you who have a copy of the complaint want to read along, the transcript of the second call to 911 is at the bottom of page 21 and then the top of 22. This is our expert, John Melcher's transcript of Kyle's words to the 911 operator.
So what you can tell from that call, that really tragic call, is that he spoke very clearly even before she engaged the TTY machine. So even if there was some momentary time when she wasn't paying attention and that caused her to turn on the machine, she certainly should have played it back. And you just heard what she'd have heard if she had played it back. And the good that could have happened from that never happened.
The lawsuit is also pointing out the problems that the police officers did. They did not follow their training. They did not provide Kyle the rescue that he needed. The officers were given all the information they needed, even though they could have been given so much more. They knew the address, 5471 Red Bank Road. You'll see in the complaint and in your information that we have plotted on a different map, not this one, but a different one, that the address for 5471 Red Bank Road, you put that in your cell phone right now and you drive there, you are 12 parking spots south of where Kyle's van was located. They did not plot that on their map on the computer that's inside their vehicle. They did not use their cell phones, which they used to call Kyle and get his name, but they didn't use their cell phone to find that address. The officers drove around. We have the map in the complaint and in our expert, Michael Lyman. He is a police practices expert. He plotted the entire route that the officers drove around 7 Hills schools. They were on scene for 11 minutes. They drove into every single parking lot except this one. They drove as close as here. They entered this part of this lot in front of the thrift store. They exited here, and they never went to the north end where Kyle was. He was in a van, easily observable. They did not get out of their cars and search for him. Our expert has concluded that those actions by the officers were reckless, they were wanton, they were deliberately indifferent to Kyle's safety, and the officers knew that he was at risk. This was a high priority call. They knew that he was trapped, and they knew that he was inside a van. So the case is also against the officers for their actions.
And of course, the case also is against ultimately the City of Cincinnati. The Plush family tried to work very closely with the city, as I mentioned, right after their son died. And in fact, the Plush family would prefer to work in a constructive manner with 911 call centers. They have created a foundation, Answer the Call Foundation, that now has visited something like 60 centers in 6 states where they meet with call takers, where they learn about issues that are being raised, where they promote the latest in technology, training, and supervision, and they hope, and really do hope, that someday they'll have that kind of constructive relationship again with Cincinnati. The lawsuit details all the problems that the city was distracted by in the months leading up to Kyle's death, including the discharge of former city manager Harry Black. And I know that the city will probably tell you, look, we had an action plan, and Jill Plush said it best when she said, you know, how do you assess an action plan when you haven't even firmly and clearly diagnosed the problems? How does that action plan have any credibility? So we're still open to hearing of anyone's problems that they have with the 911 calls. We're hoping that we can continue the work of the family with the subpoena power that comes from a lawsuit and with the work we can do with our experts to get to the bottom of what caused Kyle's death. And ultimately, this lawsuit goes to the heart of governance. I mean, we turn over really important stuff to our government. That is our safety. The government is the only group that runs a 911 call center. And when we give them that power and authority, we expect them to use it responsibly. And when they screw up, we expect them to fess up and to be honest about what the mistakes were so that we never have this happen again. That has not happened with respect to the death of Kyle Plush. Hopefully, through this lawsuit, we'll bring that truth closer to reality. Your questions?
Do you feel what the city put forth, I mean, you basically said it, do you feel like this was just kind of all orchestrated, their studies, or what these two investigations found, it was essentially a whitewash?
I'm concerned that the city never dug deep enough, especially with the work that we're getting back from Mr. Melcher. He tells us that there are electronic records of every call to the call taker, of every dispatch, of all the CAD entries, and we've gotten a few of those from our public records requests, but Jennifer's been running that end of it. She sent out a lot of requests that have not yet been answered, and if we haven't gotten that stuff back, that means that MCP didn't get it, and if MCP didn't get it, then nobody's looked at it, and so we don't know what happened. And therefore, we're concerned that the investigation by the city has just been a scratch on the surface, and we need to do much more.
But there were two independent investigations. I mean, what do you think about those organizations being like, okay, we're all done, and here's everything, and we don't find any problems?
I don't know who those people are. All I can tell you is that the city hired them, and they're contractors who give advice to the cities, and if they are not unleashed to tell it like it is, then you have a problem. Think about this. Remember the killing of Sam DuBose, and remember the first report that came back from the independent contractor that UC hired. They were blunt. They called it just like it was. It was clear that they were going to be very independent and thorough. The tone, everything about that report was so different than what you get from MCP. Yeah,
So you've had dealings with the city for a very long time, and a lot of things about holding them accountable. Have you ever seen a period of time where the city hasn't been giving records like we've seen in, recent months with like a lot of people having to sue, and now you're not getting your records? Is this something new, or do you feel like it's been ongoing?
What's your take?
Yeah, I don't think I have enough records request experience with the city to know if it's new, but in the beginning, we started in January, we were getting our records. As we got records in, we had more records to request. As our experts asked for more information, we had more information to request, which shows me that the investigators for the city weren't asking for everything that they really needed. And the city has not been producing that type of data that we've been asking for our communications expert in the last several months. We haven't received anything in 2 months. But in addition to that, the investigations that the city did were limited to the internal affairs interviews of everyone. And those interviews, while chock full of good information, left a lot uncovered. There's a lot of information that we would take in a deposition of everybody and get hours of information from them, but you first need the records. And you need the recordings, and you need the data and the metadata before you can ask people the right questions. That wasn't done by their investigators.
They made some changes. Were you able to track how many dispatchers they've hired, for example, or any of those kinds of things? Have you been able to, and was any of that at all, any of the things that they had done been satisfactory to the Plush family?
The family is not satisfied. The bottom line on that, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you haven't thoroughly diagnosed the problem, then would you want a doctor to operate on an organ, without knowing whether it's sick or not? So here we have a failure to completely diagnose all the errors that led to Kyle's death. And until that happens, you can't trust that throwing a few more dispatchers into the mix will help, or buying a new gizmo will help. I mean, those may turn out to be helpful to the overall efficiency of the operation, but it may not get at the core problem. I'll tell you right now, one of the things we can tell just from the limited information we've gotten is that supervision and quality assurance were missing. I mean, these calls were horrible. And they're told that they're operating consistent with their training. I mean, that's scary because these calls just completely failed to follow basic 911 standards. And until we get supervisors who know what they're listening for, and then enough staff to make sure you actually do quality assurance, reviews, like you listen to calls over and over again, we'll never be sure that this operation is operating correctly.
Were you able to determine if how apparent that was, this screen with the blue dot? In other words, was there not a screen beside, like two screens? Does this appear on a screen that the dispatchers are looking at?
That's a great question. As a matter of fact, one of the things Mr. Melcher is looking for is metadata to tell him that the first call taker pulled up the screen and it showed these things. And that has not yet been produced. He can tell this, and because he knows how to do this stuff, he can turn all these numbers into these dots. And so he can tell us that they had this really accurate information. But did she pull it up on a screen? That's part of Jennifer's ongoing public records request. We don't know for
We don't
sure.
know yet, that means the city doesn't know yet. How can they be exonerated
Yeah,
if they didn't pull it up on their screen?
right. And so we don't know one way or the other. Obviously, if she had, that's amazing. It's terrible that she'd be looking at it and then not dialogue with the officers. But stay tuned. I mean, this is some of the work that unfortunately we have to do through a private lawsuit that government should have done from the get-go.
I was just saying, I mean, the city's 911 center has been an issue that has been talked about for several years with the split from the county. So this goes back a ways. Is there a roadmap already moving forward that exists in other cities that the Melcher Group has maybe found that could be applied here quickly?
We aren't there yet. I don't know. One of the things he emphasized is that everybody's situation is slightly different, and therefore you can't do a one-size-fits-all. But that is a good sort of metric to look for. What are the standards and what are the guidelines for a efficient, good, well-run operation? One of the things you'll keep seeing, one of the things you see on the city's website is the percent of calls that you answer within 10 seconds. Well, we're a little concerned about what happens after the call's answered, not just whether it got answered in 10 seconds. So there's a lot more work to do.
You now have subpoena power because of the lawsuit. You'll be deposing everyone involved, along with other people, I'm sure. So what are you looking to, are you gonna have to just subpoena the records you've already requested, or is there just more going on, or can you elaborate on that without?
Right, the records we've already requested, yes, we need to get those, and now we can get them with a subpoena, assuming that the city has preserved everything. We need to ask the questions of the people who are involved, their supervisors, the managers, because we need to figure out what went wrong so that we can get the reforms and the changes made that would solve this problem. Hiring, equipment, whatever the city's spending money on, they spent $100,000 on these 2 investigations, and we still don't know why everything occurred and what all went wrong. We know some of it, but we don't know all of it. So the purpose of the lawsuit is to get to the bottom of that so that we can make the changes, tell the city what they did wrong, tell the citizens what they did wrong, tell Kyle's parents what went wrong, because their goal is to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Which is also why we've been asking if anyone else in the community has had trouble with 911, hasn't received a response appropriately or a delayed response, or their call just wasn't responded to at all, that we would ask that those people let us know and contact us.
Okay.
I do want to just let you know that in addition to the paper that we handed out to you, everything is electronic and on our website and available for download, gbfirm.com,
Oh, and
including the recordings. the 291 calls are on there as well.
We also filed a motion this morning for a temporary restraining order asking that the court order the city not to destroy any records or misplace them or in any way change them. The court will set a hearing later this week on that motion.
Do you have a judge yet? Or-
Judge Ruhlman will
Ruhlman.
hear that. All right, thank you very much.